Yeah, a handful of games. I guess the final number was 3001, and I always laugh damn near all of them in a row.
Hello and welcome to Baseball Barbacast, the only baseball podcast in the world who thinks Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce should have gotten engaged on the Jumbotron at a Royals game. I'm Jake Mintz, that's Jordan Shusterman. And yes, we will be chatting at the end of the show about the most famous couple in the world and their connection to the baseball universe. But at the end, because we have much bigger fish to fry on this episode as we welcome a very special guest, literally Cal Ripken Jr., who played the most games in a row. Don't know if you heard about that. My baseball hero as a kid. He hopped on like a call and talked to us for 25 minutes. I still can't really believe it.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was like very shortly after the Taylor Swift news dropped, but we were able to collect ourselves and talk to someone that I know you've been looking forward to talking to for quite a long time. And it was a really, really cool opportunity, of course, with the 30th anniversary of him setting that incredible record coming up in early September. We got to chat with the Hall of Famer about it. And it's an awesome conversation. So looking forward to everyone hearing that. But we do have some other stuff to get to before we get to Mr. Ripken. Let's get to our opener.
Before the 2025 season comes to a close, we already have the 2026 schedule, which was dropped hours before trailer engaged one another. And the MLB schedule release does not have the significance nor the pizzazz of the NFL or even the NBA schedule release. That is because we have so many games, and nowadays every team plays every team. And so it's not like, oh, who we got this year? Oh, okay, cool. We're playing the Reds. Wow. Now, there are some interesting takeaways from what we received. Jordan, where would you like to begin?
Yeah, so I mean, each schedule, especially now where we've had, a collection of jewel events and like special games to look forward to. Obviously, when the season has started overseas, that has been a significant part of the announcement. But in this case, there's nothing too out of the ordinary. I think a lot of the reaction to this year's schedule we can kind of get into in more of a macro sense, not about the specifics of who's playing where on certain holiday or certain celebration, but also just like what baseball schedules look like now. I mean, this will be, I guess, the fourth season of the balanced schedule that is coming up in 2026. And that is something that I know has attracted a lot of discourse. And even though it's not a new thing, I think seeing it once again in this press release format, and now that we've kind of gone through it a few years, I know that people have developed some pretty strong feelings about what it means for every team to play every other team and for every team to visit every city every other year, and what that does to kind of the experience of watching your favorite team, which is, of course, the experience for most fans, is they just care about what their experience is watching their favorite team. But before we get to that, I mean, obviously MLB is going to highlight some certain things that are different about the 2026 schedule than others. Most notably, we have a very early opening day. In fact, we have an opening night coming up next year between the Yankees and the Giants on Wednesday, March 25th, before the traditional opening day that we have grown used to kind of having on the Thursday where everybody plays. But little opening night action. I sure, fine, whatever. Baseball, I have to wait one fewer day for it.
Yeah. A bizarre choice, San Francisco, not because the Giants are weird and boring and perpetually mid, but it's probably going to be like pretty still cold there and windy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I would
be that in New York too, but
and
but that's true.
Day,
that's true, right?
Like March 25th it's maybe not the best representation. Like, do that in a dome.
Sure. But we're going to deal with that for most of the March and April games anyway. I will say I am a little bit torn about Wednesday night, because that Wednesday before opening day without the games, especially because we so often still even have like some spring training exhibitions on like the Monday and Tuesday as teams are leaving Arizona and Florida. Like that Wednesday is so much normally been a like, all right, let's take a breather.
Here we go.
And now we go. And now it's just like baseball, we're going, for the next 6-7 months.
Wednesday night
is nonstop. And not having that now is I'm a little torn on that, to be honest.
I agree. I'm not asking for less baseball, but that's dinner with the spouse. That's, we're going out, like we're cooking an elaborate meal. This is the last hurrah of having free nights undistracted for many months. And I agree with you that I liked the structure of that before. Rivalry weekend is back May 15th to May 17th. All the rivalries are the same. None of those have changed, which is, we've bantered quite a bit about rivalry weekend. It's a good thing because we like rivalries. The one thing about rivalry weekend that's like whatever is, I think spreading out the rivalries over the course of the season is good for people like us who watch all of the games, because you kind of lose some of them in that weekend. Whereas over the course of the year, it's like, okay, this weekend, it's these two teams. That's great. I can lock in and I can watch that. What else do we have here? Jackie Robinson Day, Mets, Dodgers in LA will be very cool. The A's will be playing games in Las Vegas at the minor league ballpark consecutive series in June against the Brewers and the Rockies. That will be very interesting to see like how the ballpark plays, first of all, and how Las Vegas reacts to having the A's there.
Yeah, I mean, so they've already played some spring training games there since they've announced like we're coming to Vegas. That is one of the most hitter friendly ballparks in the minors. So, maybe we'll see a bunch of home runs there. Here's an idea. Why don't we just play it on the active construction site? Just set up some, set up some fences. We see this sometimes when new stadiums are being built. I have a very vivid memory of when Marlins Park was being built. They went in there and like took batting practice with like the construction essentially ongoing. Like I remember I like have this image of Marlins at that point just they must have told the construction workers like, hey, heads up, we're gonna be launching some baseballs here in this active construction site. Could you play a whole game? Probably not. But I do feel like we are going to have those photo ops at some point with with Kurtz and Langoliers and Soderstrom just absolutely ripping balls over the cranes with the Vegas skyline. I think that's going to happen at some point. There you go. Oh my God, look at that. We have that right here. Hanley Ramirez. Oh, what an image. What an image. This is like with Marlins Park under construction 2011. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this image, MLB Cathedrals on Twitter. Yeah, I remember that. I hope that they can replicate that for the Vegas. I don't know what the status of the ballpark will be at that point next summer, but I would love to see a version of that for the new Vegas ballpark.
One other little segment of the schedule that really made me laugh is what the Jays have to start. Did you see this? They go A's at home, Rockies at home, White Sox on the road, could be 11-0, and then immediate whiplash, Dodgers in town. They're gonna have to get ready.
So here's what I'll say about this. I think in this specific case, I think it feels highly likely that what you were projecting is what is going to happen. That said, the degree to which people are reacting to some of the specifics of the schedule as if they know what month is going to be hard or easy based on how good your team's going to be, how good these other teams are going to be. Hey, guess what? If you looked at the schedule this time last year and you said, oh God, we have to play the Braves 6 times. Yeah, guess what? They stink. They stink. You don't have to worry about that because baseball's impossible to predict. The offseason has yet to come. All these players are going to change teams and people are going to get hurt. And some teams are going to suddenly decide to stink like the Twins. Like, what, trying to act like you know what any of this is going to look like for your team this far in advance is very, very, very silly, but also part of the fun. So I'm not going to tell people how to react to the schedule, but it is quite amusing to look at it and be like, oh, I know what that's going to be like. And listen, we talk about the schedule in the moment all the time because it feels a little bit closer. It feels a little bit more tangible. But this far in advance, it's hilarious to me to try and project strength of schedule.
The one other thing for next season is the World Cup, which is coming to North America there are a number of games that are going to be rescheduled or moved around to accommodate for the World Cup. Now, that is just because many of these stadiums share areas, parking lots with the football stadium, presumably, that will be hosting games. I believe that is the case in Seattle. I believe that is the case in Philly. I think there's maybe one, or maybe Kansas City, I believe,
Kansas
has
City and Texas.
a World Cup game. Okay. And so
Yeah,
that's just something to keep
Arlington
in
will have
mind,
to
that
deal with this. Yeah.
our entire sporting world next summer is going to be World Cupified more than really ever before. And I am very surprised that MLB would schedule Dodgers Yankees in New York the weekend of the World Cup final. Like, that World Cup final is going to be a night game, probably, right? So let's say it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern at MetLife in Jersey.
Will it be though? Because it's a global. I don't know, man.
People are waking up, brother. They're waking up. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it
it's
could
true.
be
It
at 3
doesn't really
a.m.
matter.
and it's going to draw.
That's
Like,
true. People are watching it. It doesn't really matter what it is. So if you're just worried
And
about
I'm not
TV,
saying
then
that-
yeah, I guess.
Sure, I'm just saying baseball shouldn't like bend over backwards for every last sporting event. But it just feels like an odd time to put the two most popular teams by a mile playing one another in the city where the World Cup final is going on. Like, do you think that the Dodgers Yankees, obviously in any other circumstance, would be the Sunday night game, right? And for all we know, the Sunday night game could be on like Tubi or, your
Right.
like, we don't know. I understand. But do you think that the Dodgers Yankees will go toe to toe with the World Cup final on Sunday night?
The World Cup final is gonna be on Roku Sunday leadoff. I don't know. Yeah,
You
no,
get
it's
one
it's a fair question.
broadcaster. You do one broadcaster from Argentina and like one from Germany, and like,
Oh, unfortunately, our play-by-play guy is from Argentina, and he has to call this epic goal from who's on Germany now. Is Leroy Sané still playing? What's he up to? I don't know.
Don't hurt yourself.
I can't. I'm very. My soccer references are probably very outdated at this point. Anyway, the point is that is a fair question. It is a fair question. The World Cup is something that, it's. I think at the very least, baseball's like, yeah, okay, we acknowledge this is a little bit more important than our regular season games going on in Kansas City and Seattle and Texas and so on. But that is an interesting wrinkle. Of course, we will have the All-Star game in Philadelphia, which will be a grand old time. Yeah.
One dynamic with the World Cup being here, we are going to get so many international soccer players throwing out first pitches at games because of the way that the World Cup schedule is like staggered, and they'll be in all these big cities while these baseball games are like going on. Like, we're going to see freaking Ghana roll up to a Marlins game, and like, so we're going to have like over under 7.5 soccer superstars throwing out first pitches.
Yeah, which is an important category of other athlete throwing out first pitch because it's soccer. And so the upper body coordination, and this is also even more true when you see, putting Mbappe in the cage. It's a fascinating watch, right? It's like, man, these guys are world class, but they can't do anything if you put a Marucci in their hand. So I don't know. We'll see. That's a great call. So now I'm just thinking about other World Cup implications of the schedule. Anyway, I will say too, but besides the specifics, as you mentioned, some of these things we're used to. We'll see if other Jewel events get announced. I know the Field of Dreams game we've mentioned. I assume and hope the Little League Classic will be back, although I am not sure if that's been fully confirmed. But I did want to have at least a brief conversation again about just the concept of the balanced schedule and how people have started to react to it. Because I know you had a tweet that definitely resonated with some folks. Also, people disagreed with. We've gotten a couple emails about this. We got an email from Jonah about this, who basically made the point, like, listen, like, I hear the perspective of that. Yes, the bigger markets are are seeing the Dodgers, Padres, and Yankees, Red Sox more often is good. But we have to think about the other teams and what was the point of it to begin with. Because the reason why I wanted to bring this up is the premise of your tweet, which I don't totally disagree with, but I think it's important to get at it, which is the concept of fairness versus why we did this in the first place. Was the balanced schedule about so that everyone is playing everyone, so that the strength of schedule is in theory more balanced than oh, you're lucky you're in the AL Central, you get to play all these crappy teams all the time, or whatever that happens to be the case this year? Or is it what Manfred has kind of said and has been presented as, which is we want everybody in every city to be able to see all the best players come through their city every 2 years. What is most important? I see it both ways. It's all part of it. And I think that I do think, as Jonah points out in his email, and as you point out too, like when these series happen is as much having to do with the perception
100%.
and the experience as much as how often they happen. And I think that is kind of where I lie, because I am definitely more pro-bound schedule than I think you are. But I do think that has to be a way to, especially in the second half, maintain the stakes and the excitement of watching the division rivalries, really unfold when the games feel like they matter more.
And it's tough, right? Because the balanced schedule as an idea for fairness, I couldn't give a crap. And I know people in front offices in certain divisions are happy with this setup when you're in the AL East and it's like, thank God, like we don't have to pay the Red Sox 6 times, we play them 4, right? That's generally a positive for those types of teams. I do think it is a good thing that if you live in a city, you get to see the players every 2 years. You really, and I think that is meaningful. I think in the day and age where those games are on TV, it's a little different. It's less important because if I'm a huge Bobby Witt fan living in Miami, like I know it's not the same, but I can watch Bobby Witt every night on MLB TV. Like I don't need to wait for him to come to town. Whereas those matchups the rivalries extend beyond being at the game. Now, if you're one idea would be like, let's backload all the division matchups to the second half in a way, right? So you could have guaranteed, Red Sox, Yankees, Dodgers, Padres down the stretch. I think that's a good thing. But then you have the situation, you've tweeted about this too, where it's like the Cardinals and Cubs, right, didn't play until June or something. Yeah. And that's bizarre. Yeah. And I just think that if we're going to give teams, like if you win your division, winning your division should mean something. And I think beating that record that you end up with should be more weighted on how you do within the division. And I think adding more games within your division makes that more representative and captures the spirit of that a little bit more. Now, I know this is all going to be torpedoed in 3 years when we have realignment. I get it. But I just
probably
think
more than 3 years, but yeah.
Yeah. I just think having those high market games down the stretch is a good thing for the sport. I just do.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. And the last thing I'll say on this is, right, if we could have a way to just spread it out more. I mean, it's not even that they're not playing in September. It's that we concentrated these Dodgers-Padres games over the course of 2 weeks in June and then 2 weeks in August. And again, there's so many logistical things that go into making this schedule. Totally. So it's easy for us to sit here and be like, hey, just make it this way. Why don't you do that? At the same time, if clearly they have found a way to change the schedule in a very significant way, and there's clearly still more upside to be had in the way that they structure it, even if the same allotment of games stays the same. And it is interesting, your point about the divisional, earning it in the division and what that means, because what you're describing is more of what we're kind of used to in college sports. And I don't know if we'd ever see that in baseball, where it's like, all right, you went 18-12 in the SEC, you won the SEC, even if you have a worse overall record than a team that's, 16-14, right? Like that is something we're used to in college baseball. And honestly, if we're talking, that is in some ways, you could argue is trying to achieve more fairness to some degree. But I think that's really interesting, and I wonder how fans feel about that. I'm sure it probably varies for each division. And the other part about it is all these things is cyclical. This goes back to my point about trying to project what the schedule is going to mean even a year out, is we assume that these are the rivalries that are going to be the most important ones forever, but that's just not always true. I mean, yes, we can assume that Dodgers Padres the way with these ownership and Red Sox Yankees, but Cardinals Cubs we would have assumed was going to be more important for longer, and if we had built the schedule around Cardinals Cubs, then that would have now ended up looking like a flop, and it's more Cubs Brewers.
Sure,
so
but I think that
some
no
of those
matter
things
what,
are kind of tough to predict.
The final month,
yes,
ensuring that you basically play every division team once in the final month.
I think that's a great point.
Like, I know that that's hard because you have 5 teams. It's an odd number, and that would be difficult. You should play everybody, not home and home, right? But like every team should play every division rival once in the last month to guarantee that you have that. That's my suggestion.
I think that's a very simple. I think that's a very, very simple fix. That could be. It sounds simple to us, at least. Again, I know there's a lot of complications with how these schedules work. But all that said, there is one more part of the schedule that we have to talk about. This is something that I can't believe I have held off in watching up until this point. But now, while releasing the baseball schedule because it is much longer is different than when the football teams get to announce their schedules of 17. How many games do they play now? I don't know, but it's a lot smaller number. And so NFL teams get to get really creative with how they announce their schedules, because they can really lean into just that small number of games. For baseball, it's a little bit more challenging, but we have seen increased creativity in recent years about how teams choose to announce the schedule, and this year was no different. But this time, for the purpose of this podcast, we are going to zoom in on the Detroit Tigers, who have gifted us with something that we have referenced so many times on this show, which is a Tigers anthem courtesy of Detroit rapper G-Mac Cash. Tigers won again, which he came out with last year during their Tigers epic run as a kind of a follow-up to Lions won again. We are huge G-Mac Cash fans, and my understanding is we have a new version of Tigers won again that has been released alongside the 2026 Tigers schedule. Jake and I have not watched this yet, but I have been thinking about what could be referenced in this song since I saw it 24 hours ago. And we are now going to watch it here, and we are going to give our takeaways.
Before we begin, over under 4.5 Tiger players referenced.
4.5?
We'll say Tiger players and employees, so we can include like Scott Harris or
Benetti,
Chris Fetter, Benetti. Okay, get ready with Benetti.
I think I'm going to go under. I think they're going to lean into just some of the opponents and just I think it's going to be G-Mac Cash talking about the Tigers, kicking the Royals' ass and kicking the Guardians' ass and kicking the Twins' ass. That's my guess as to what this will be. But let's find out.
Wow. Over hits. Let's just
Jake Mintz, the over hits. Not only does the over hit, we have references to players that probably aren't on the 2026 Tigers.
GT Gleyber Torres is a free agent.
I mean, that is G-Mac Cash breaking news that Gleyber Torres is signing an extension after, I know he's been a lot worse lately, but this is incredible. Will Vest, bulletproof vest, love that. That's a huge win for him. We got a Kerry Bonds reference for Kerry Carpenter. We've got what is it? What they gonna do with Javi? Love that. That's great. So
we got pitchers rhyming with food court. Torque. I think it's Torque hits it to the food court.
Scooble and Will Vest are our only. This is a tough look for Jack Flaherty, for Casey Mize, for honestly Tyler Holton, who if he had repeated the season that he had last year, I mean Will Vest is and honestly Will Vest earned it, right? Because when you used to look at pitching chaos from last year, and you say all right, this is a magical run for this pitching staff. how is this going to sustain or repeat in 2025? And the answer is it really hasn't. A lot of these guys have taken big steps backward, but Will Vest has absolutely sustained, and he has earned himself a GMAC Cash reference. I'm a little disappointed we did not get a Zach McKinstry ZMAC Cash reference, but I'm not going to get too greedy.
So as far as my notes here show, we have Riley Green, okay? We have Scooble, we have Torque, we have GT, Gleyber Torres. We have GT, Javi Baez. Yep. This is an amazing one. We have Kerry Bonds. We have Dylan Dingler.
Oh, I missed that one.
He goes Dylan on the catch. Right after Kerry Bonds, there's a clip of Dylan Dingler throwing down the second. There's a very small clip, but Dylan Dingler is definitely in here.
Dylan on the catch. Oh,
Dylan on the catch. Dingler.
Oh.
Okay. And then you have one more Scooble, and then you have Will Vest. Wow. I mean, that is everything I could have dreamed of.
This really feels like GMAC Cash. Here's some main character energy from us here. This feels like GMAC Cash heard us we've referenced this song so many times, but when we first talked about it, we were like, come on, man, like let's get some names in there. Let's get some references. Let's get some players. Like let's see that ball, Mr. Cash. And I gotta say,
bulletproof
the
vest.
guy knows ball. Bulletproof vest. Holy crap. That fired me up. All right. Well, I'm going to be listening to that all day. And again, just for those of you who haven't watched it, or just essentially they're just kind of sprinkling in the series as like graphics. It's not like he's talking about like, oh, we're going to Minnesota in August, which is fine. I'm sure when he was writing this song, he was like, yeah, I'd rather make references to guys named Vest. Any other takeaways? Who else got snubbed? Again, like Gleyber Torres is a pretty amazing inclusion considering we're talking about 2026. But
I would say Kevin McGonigal and Max Clark.
Oh, I think Max Clark's got to yeah, that's true. I think you could have referenced the top tier farm system.
Biggest snub is AJ Hinch, I think. The skipper.
I agree. Unless it was in there and we missed it, I think that's correct because
we got
AJ Hinch is honestly like more likely to be there than any of these guys in multiple seasons.
Way more.
So yeah, that's a great point. Tough luck. I mean, again, missed opportunity for our guy Matt Vierling, Parker Meadows. I know he's been injured. So I'm interested to. I think I'm definitely going to see the Tigers in September and probably October. So I look forward to talking to them about how this song has been received and if any of them feel snubbed or especially proud. And there you have it. The Tigers won again. All right.
Let's talk to Cal Ripken.
Let's talk to Cal Ripken Jr. A weird transition, but obviously this is a very fun conversation. Do you need to intro it anymore? I mean, no, this is really cool. I mean, people who have listened to us and obviously know Jake's background and Baltimore familial connections knows that this is a very cool thing for reasons that will become very clear as we talk to Cal Ripken. So you don't have to tell that part again here, but any other big picture thoughts before we kick it to Cal?
The ceremony that the O's are doing for 2-1-3-1 on September 6th. It was funny. Someone at the Orioles was telling me about it. I was like, what day? And they were like, are you dumb? I was like, yeah, that was a bad question. September 6th, Saturday night against the Dodgers. I think the Camden Yards is going to be bopping. So that'll be really cool. All right. Here is our conversation with Cal Ripken Jr. after a break. And welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. We are delighted and overjoyed to be joined by a very special guest, a gentleman who played a handful of baseball games in his career, Cal Ripken Jr. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, a handful of games. I guess the final number was 3,001, and I always laugh damn near all of them in a row.
I went back and, prepping to talk to you, I went back and watched some of the interviews you were doing around the time of 2-1-3-1, and, something that made me laugh was when Chris Berman asked you on the day if you thought you were going to be in the lineup. Do you remember this?
Yeah. I had that. There was a couple other similar kind of asked.
Yeah.
Am I going to have somebody cut up my food on the days leading up to it so I don't have a knife accident? You know, so anyway, um, or uh, what was another one? It might have been People Magazine at the time. Asked me if there was something about soap on a rope so that you wouldn't slip on soap in the shower.
Oh, so no
Mm.
shower
Yeah,
injuries.
And
the
so,
ultimate bubble wrap situation. Like we got to make sure you're
yeah,
making it to that special
for
day.
sure.
So for those of you listening who are not enormous Orioles fans, we are coming up on the anniversary of 2131, the all-time record for consecutive games played that Cal broke in 1995. And so just very quickly, Cal, my story with this is I was born the day before, 9595, September 5th, 1995. My whole mom's side of the family is from Baltimore, and my grandmother left my mother in the hospital to go to the game. She had tickets, and she said, I have grandkids. I will have more, but I have season tickets, and I have lived in Baltimore my whole life, and I'm not missing this. And I was born at like 5:45 p.m. And there's a picture of me like in front of the TV as you're looking at 2130. And my question for you is like, I'm sure you've heard many stories like this over the years, right? The way that people connect to what you accomplished. Are there any of them that stand out where you're like, wow, that is a great little tale. That is a great nugget of how 2130, 2131 connected with
I
someone?
wish I had one really great story, but a lot of them are similar to what you're describing right
Yeah.
now. Is that September 6th? They were born on September 6th, and people took great pride that they were born and either had the game on in the hospital or kept going out, looking at it, and coming back. So I've met a lot of people. It's been a long time now. It's the 30th year anniversary. So, but it is a great pride that people take that were born either on September 5th or September 6th. Um, I joke with Eddie all the time is that Eddie hit his 500th home run on September 6th, 1996. So every time it comes up, I send him happy anniversary. And he says, "Yeah, you had to overshadow my 500th home run."
Very
But
selfish.
I don't know. I guess you get philosophical in your old age. You try to figure out why it was so important to a lot of people, and I think that people really relate to loving something and showing up for it every day. You know, I wasn't one that had a perfect attendance in school. Matter of fact, I think my parents and sometimes I believe that you needed a day or two to get back on track. Sometimes where you stay home and you really weren't sick, but you stayed home so you could catch up. Um, so, but many people went to work for 30 years or 35 years or 40 years in an assembly line. Or my favorite one was Ernie Tyler. The Tylers around Baltimore. Ernie Tyler was the umpire attendant, um, and he didn't miss a game for 31 years. Come to the ballpark every day, and he broke his streak when on my induction ceremony in 2007. So I just think it's interesting. I've enjoyed hearing people's stories about that. So it must be a value. It must be a principle that
Yeah.
we all care about and that we relate to. You might not be able to relate to somebody throwing 100 or somebody that can hit a
Certainly not.
baseball and hit 100. You certainly can relate to an attitude or persistence or perseverance that you do in your own lives.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that I was really curious about, because now as we come up on the anniversary and there'll be so much celebrating that specific day and how that day went, and we're going to get into that with you too. But I want to talk about the years leading up to it, because for me, looking back on it, it's not like you woke up that day on September 6th and you're like, oh my God, I'm about to set this record. Wow, where did this come from? But at some point, like at what point did this become a thing? Because that's a long time to be building up to it. Obviously, going into that season in '95, it was very much in people's minds. But how many games did you have to play in a row before people actually really did take notice?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I can give you a sort of a timeline. I got to the big leagues, just before my 21st birthday. I turned 21 later that month. I got called up. Um, I played every day in my rookie year. became the rookie of the year. Played every day in my second year. We won the World Series. So rookie of the year, and I won the MVP, and we won the World Series in the first 2 years. And so I was just learning to play the position, learning how to what my potential could be. So you kept going out there and playing, and the managers just kept writing my name in the lineup, and was responding. And I would guess about 800 or 900 games, people started to take notice of it. I mean, I guess that's what's that, 5 years worth. And during that time frame, I think I did during that 5 year period, I played in every inning of every game,
Yeah.
and but never gave it a thought. Nobody ever thought about is this thing good? Is this thing bad? Is it harmful to them? I was just going out and playing, and the managers wrote my name in the lineup. It wasn't until we got close to the National League record, they started taking notice of it, and then Everett Scott was like 1306. And then so he was second to Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig's number was so far in advance that nobody really thought about it. But the Orioles went into a rebuilding mode, in and around that time frame. A lot of challenges. Every time it seemed like I went into a slump or the team wasn't playing well, there was sort of a negative feeling towards the streak. That Cal should take a day off. He's being selfish. All he cares about is himself. He should, for the sake of the team. But all I did was show up with the same attitude that I did when we were winning in those
Yeah.
times, and saying, you want to play. And the manager has to sit in his office and decide who can meet the challenge of the day, and they write your name in the lineup. So I never believed in it. Sometimes I kind of resent the fact that you had to defend yourself, that you wanted to play, because there's some people that if they didn't want to face the pitcher that was pitching that particular night, it was very tough on them. They might come up with a mysterious illness or a injury like a day or two before, so they don't have to face that person. I always thought that that person should have to defend himself why
Yeah.
he
Totally.
wasn't playing. Um, and so, but then it got to a point probably around 16 or 1700 games, maybe 1800, where everybody turned positive. All my critics they jumped on the side and said, this is the greatest thing for baseball. Cal's got to break this record. There was collective bargaining issues and labor issues,
Right.
Yeah.
around that time. And I think that everybody thought it would be good for baseball if we focused on that at the time. So it was all happy. And then even after the record was broken in 1995, I continued playing 500 more games after that, and we were really good in '96 and '97. And if there was one moment that I think I was selfish in the whole streak thing, it was in '97. I herniated a disc in my back in July, and I'm thinking we're the best team in the league from the opening day till now, and I'm not going to miss out on this. So I asked the doctor. I said, "Look, if I can get through the pain, would I do any permanent damage to myself?" And he said, "No, I don't think you will." So I gave it a try. I wasn't going to miss out on being on a good team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that there was criticism in like 1991. You guys win 67 games. The difference in you taking a day off and not taking a day off is not going to transform the 1991 Orioles into like this perennial, this contending ball club. So I think
Sure.
that dynamic is really interesting. I want to zoom in on September 6th, 1995 for a second, because one of my favorite nuggets from the story is you taking your daughter to kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
Because I think your appeal and why people gravitated towards what you accomplished was in large part because it was very relatable, right? It was, you went to work every day. And here you are on the morning where you are the most famous person in America on that day, doing the most normal human thing that someone can possibly do, drop their kid off for their very first day of school. So my question for you is, what do you remember about that specific interaction of getting in the car in the morning, driving to the school, dropping her off, and driving home?
It's amazing is that just came up with my daughter about a week ago. She was trying to figure out a way to come back. She's got a pretty demanding job out in Colorado, and she was saying, "Dad, I can't make it back for the for our anniversary." She used to call it, and and then I said, yeah, it's kind of cool looking back on September 6th and breaking the record and all that. She goes, "I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about my 30th anniversary of you taking me to school, my first day at school." And I remember I was pretty exhausted during that time. It was like there was a lead up, there was a finish line, there was giving extra time as
Yeah.
best you could.
You're not
Um,
sleeping much.
and I had a little bit of a fever. I was not feeling really well. So you're not sleeping really well. But it was really important to get up and take your daughter to a first day of school. And I'm glad she remembers it that way. I'm glad that she looks back on it. It was our time. I got some ink in the paper, and she got a mention, which she never really liked the attention that the name brought to her. But in this particular case, she was proud of it. So
So did you
um,
like
it,
take her into the school, or did you drop her off in front? Like, were there people swarming your car? Like, what was that environment like?
no, early on, in the first day of school, you want to make sure you haven't really got the carpool thing down at her school.
You
And
had
so
never
yeah,
done carpool. This was your
yeah,
first carpool experience as a dad,
I
right?
did
Like,
walk her in, just to make sure
okay.
everything was all right, and she was good, that she felt good,
Yeah.
but she's always really independent, so that
Yeah.
was a really cool thing. And I do remember there were some times when she asked me, and during carpool, whether I could pick her up like down there a little bit or
Mm.
up there because I was getting attention in carpool line.
Can
But
you imagine? Can you imagine
but
you're your daughter's
for the most part,
being your
I used
daughter's
to come up
kindergarten teacher,
sometimes.
and like you walk in on September 6th night, like you're like, oh, this girl Rachel is on the list, and like she could be a good, and you just walk into the room. It's like mind blowing.
So she was all girls school, we were in the news a lot. So I mean, it was definitely a big deal. Um, but I remember things like this, like I would pull up to pick her up sometimes in the carpool, and I'd open up the sunroof window, and I'd stand on the seat and yell Rachel across the way, so that all her friends would see her, and then she goes, "Dad, Dad," and I took great fun and pride in doing
Yeah.
that, just normal fun things like that.
You weren't ducking the attention. You were using it as a weapon to, make your daughter uncomfortable in the funniest possible way, which is
Absolutely.
that's great. That's
That's
extremely
fatherhood.
relatable. So okay, so again, there's so many elements of that day that we could dig into. The one element we wanted to get into is the lap. And the thing about that we wanted to ask about is because, as you mentioned, there's so much attention leading up to that day and the stuff before the game and the actual game and all these things, that when this game stops and you take a lap around the stadium, which I know was not your idea, but you were kind of pushed into doing, that sense of
Literally.
it, yeah, literally pushed into doing that sense of those actual face to face interactions in a stadium and in a city that has meant so much to you. Are those vivid memories? Were you seeing people that you had known and seen in the crowd for years? Like, how much did that kind of shrink the experience that had obviously become this nationwide phenomenon?
Yeah, there's two things. Catching the last out of the World Series is the greatest moment I ever had on the baseball field. It's part of your dream as a kid. It feels
Yeah.
great. You've achieved the ultimate. The best human moment on the baseball field was that moment in 21-31, and specifically the lap around the stadium. I remember I was embarrassed by the curtain calls, and they were clapping for 20 some straight minutes, and I kept saying thank you. And in my heart, I was thinking, okay, it's like a rain delay now where the pitchers need to stay warm. We need to stay ready to play. We got four more innings. We got to play, and then I'll celebrate however you want. So my attitude was kind of that. Thank you. Let's get the game going on. And Rafael Palmeiro came up with the idea. You're gonna have to take a lap around this ballpark before we get the game started again. I go. That's a dumb idea. I'm not doing that. And then it happened once or twice, and then Bobby Bow and he got some reinforcements. Bo and him pushed me down the line. And then I thought, okay, I shook Al Bunbury's hand. I went down, and I first was thinking, well, maybe we'll just run around fast and get this over with. But then once you started looking into everyone's eyes, there were people I knew by name. There were people I knew by face. They had been there all along. It was such a good experience. I started shaking hands. Somebody reached over the right field fence, and they tried to reach then down and touch my hand, and they fell all the way to the bottom. And I thought they fell all the way to the bottom, but the bottom was just three-quarters of the way up to the fence, so they just popped up real quick, which surprised me. But by the time I got to that point, I could care less if the game ever started again.
Yeah.
It was that sort of an experience. And he came around, especially meaningful talking to the California Angels. And one in particular was Rod Carew. When I finally watched the video of myself doing that, I saw the interaction with Rod Carew, and I was thinking, man, that was really cool, but I don't remember what was said, at that point. But I do remember leaving him and saying that was really cool. And then he got a chance to show my kids the
Yeah.
T-shirt that I wore underneath my uniform. It said 2,131 hugs and kisses for Daddy. And so at that point, the game, became secondary, and it was just one of those great personal human moments because the celebration that was so big went down to a very personal level, almost
Yeah.
one to one.
To actually touch people's hands and
Oh yeah.
build that connection. I want to ask about after the game because it's a whirlwind. You play the game, you win the game, you go yard. They rolled Joe DiMaggio out there and no one knows who's going to be there. Like we could talk about that for an hour. But then afterwards, you do all the media. You talk. I think you did an interview with Bob Costas. At what point? What time was it when you were able to sit down and like crack a beer and exhale?
Yeah, I was having the shakes by that time. I hadn't had my beer yet. No, I think it was exactly. I remember sitting down with Bob Costas, and it was like 2:30 in the morning. So it was that late
Wow.
when I actually started the interview. It felt good because there was a sense of relief. I mean, quite honestly, after 21:30, it was a foregone conclusion that the 21:31 was going to happen, and so that was a sense of relief. But up until that point, that was the first time I ever felt any pressure during the streak. I always thought, whatever happens, it's going to happen. I'll play. If I hurt myself or something happens during it, that's the way it was meant to be. But then all of a sudden, everybody's planning for the celebration, and all of a sudden, I think, man, I got to get to a finish line,
Yeah.
and I didn't like that feeling. But at the end of the game, I was exhausted. I was tired. We had an off day the next day, which we had a parade that we went around almost like it's a World Series. And then when I went on to Cleveland, it was really cool that I took the lineup cards up, for that game, and Eddie Murray brought the lineup cards up, for the Indians, and that was a really cool moment as well. So tons of really cool moments, but man, I was exhausted. Uh, the stimulation of people and trying to and you got to remember too, we had a strike in '94. They
Yeah.
canceled the World Series in the end of '94. We had a lockout to start that season, and so a lot of us were feeling, bad that we took the product away from the fans, and we were all trying to do extra, and that was a factor in the whole
Yeah.
streak as well. But by the end of 21:31, I was exhausted.
Do you remember what type of beer it was, and like who gave it to you, and like where it
What
came
kind
from?
of beer?
Yeah, to me, because when you like clean out your garage, or you like mow the lawn, and you crack that beer, and it just tastes you move someone into somewhere, and you crack that beer open, and it's just like it tastes better than any other beer you've ever had in your life. I could just like the 2-1-3-1 beer must have just been the most satisfying, gratifying, like sound and smell and taste. It's such a great little nugget.
So I was a beer drinker, and
Yeah.
sometimes I got made fun of when I went and work out after the game. I'd have a small little cooler, and you have an ice slush bucket with you, and you
Yeah.
throw a couple beers in there, and in between reps, you'd be actually sipping on a beer.
Yeah. I've done that.
So and the times when they would go down really, really fast and easy, which sometimes are dangerous when that happens to you, but we'd always call that, it went down like a creamsicle. And so I would say the 21:31 first beer I cracked after that, it was a creamsicle.
That's amazing.
That's a good way to put it. Cal, my last question for you is kind of more big picture about the premise of this streak and being an Iron Man and playing in every game, and how you have kind of observed that since then in the modern game. And I'm not asking you to come and be like, oh, I can't believe these guys aren't playing 2,000 games in a row. That's not what I'm expecting. But at the same time, it is uncommon for players to play 162 games nowadays. Matt Olson currently has a very impressive streak of over 750 games that's active, but that's of course a ways off from yours. So not that you maybe have you expected anyone to catch you or ever will, but what do you make of just like that as a concept of playing every day, and that we don't see it as often anymore?
Well, I mean, the definition of an everyday player has changed a little bit now. The
Yeah.
expectation is not for you to play 162. In my day, everyday player meant playing every day. If you think about it, you have a 162 game schedule, and especially now with the wild cards, it can boil down to one game. And it did in my first year. We were tied after 161 with Milwaukee Brewers, and we lost game number 162 and didn't make it. So we're asking ourselves, where could we have made up that one game in April, May, June? We could have gone to the World Series. We could have won. And so I think that each game is as important as as the next game. So that was always my approach and my attitude. I did run into Matt Olson in spring training this year. We were in the same restaurant, and he took particular pride at playing every game, and I like seeing that in him. I also liked I think Brady Anderson and BJ Surhoff, teammates of mine during that time. I think they each completed one season of playing 162, and they had their best seasons. And that took it felt really good to me that they pushed themselves, to find out that they could do it. Um, I don't hold any expectations. I don't begrudge anyone. Uh, I always thought when I got an injury, got nicked up a little bit, there was something positive that was going to happen. That I was going to my swing was going to get better. I hyperextended my elbow one time, and I couldn't really swing in the on deck circle. And I went up to home plate and I gingerly swung a slider in the dirt and I winced in pain. Trainer comes running out and says, what's up? And I go, I heard it on the slide 2 innings ago. And I go, and he kind of pushed on it and said, well, then stop broken. I don't know if, anything's wrong. I said, okay, I'll try it. So I waited on the next pitch, which was a fastball, up in the strike zone a little bit. Um, and I waited to put a short swing on it and hit a line drive one hopper at the second baseman. And as I was running to first base, the realization came over me that says, when you swing and miss, it hurts like hell. When you make contact, it doesn't hurt at all. And I got to tell you, I got so hot, average wise and home run wise, and it's a simple thing. Maybe you focus a little better. Maybe you shorten your swing up. Maybe you don't try as hard, and it actually proved to be a better thing. So having experienced a couple of those things, every time that I got nicked up or something, I would always think that there's a silver lining in here somewhere.
My last question for you is about transitioning into the real world, for lack of a better term. Now, I know you've been on the outside now longer than you've been on the inside. Your post career has been longer than your playing career. For someone whose entire life was built around routine, how did you go about finding that peace and that rhythm once the game, from a physical perspective, was removed from your life?
Yeah, I tried not hard. I tried really hard to focus on doing stuff as opposed to thinking about it. In my first year out, um, you know, uh, they left for spring training without me. It was almost like you have the off season. It would seem normal all the way up until spring training. And then all of a sudden you look up and they go to spring training and you're not there. And you start to think, hey, they left me. They left without me. But I was so busy trying to buy a minor league team. I was on the hook for building a new stadium in my hometown without a team, that I had to do all these things to try to buy a team, move it from the New York Penn League or you move it from one league into our league. I had to go through territorial issues. And so I focused my attention on being busy, being busy, being busy. And I chose to not stay in professional baseball because I wanted to be there for my kids more. My kids were 8 and 12 when I retired. So I want to kind of see them through high school. So you dive into baseball. I mean, minor league baseball at the time was my first to jump into business. It was a familiar product. You learn about it and you make mistakes, you do whatever. But we were successful. We started a really successful kids business. At first, we were funding it a whole lot more than we should have, but then we figured out the model where it could make money and do all that kind of stuff. But recently, joining the ownership group now, being pulled back in, David Rubenstein called and asked me to join the group. I feel myself being on the inside again. I'm being pulled back in to the highest level of baseball. It's changed a lot. A lot of analytics kind of lead the way, but there's still always room for good baseball judgment and good baseball know-how. And I think that I can be helpful on the second part of that. But I'm learning about the analytics. But it feels really good to be on the inside looking out again.
Yeah, living and dying with the results, right? Like
Yeah.
that's wins, losses, right? Like that's what it's about. Cal,
That's the fun of it.
Thank you so much for your time. And then, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but as someone who grew up in the DC, Maryland area and, went to Camden Yards when I was one, who one of the things behind me is these Coca-Cola bottles here with you across them. And,
I have a bunch of those. I wouldn't drink the Coke out of them.
No, I won't. I will not.
Staying close.
I will not. I will not. Maybe 50th anniversary of 2131. I'll crack one.
There you go. We'll
I'll
pop
crack
them
one
open together. It's like good wine.
Yeah, I don't.
Ooh, definitely.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
For sure. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being an inspiration and for making baseball, this beautiful world that so many of us love, matter and have weight to so many people. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. Let's do a little field report. So this was a very cool event that I was fortunate to do. The Women's Professional Baseball League, a league that is booting up next season, had open tryouts this weekend here, very luckily for me, in Washington, D.C. The tryouts were held from the 22nd to the 25th. Those first 3 days were at Nats Academy. They had over 600 women try out for the league. That was pared down to about 100 women for the final day of games at Nats Park, where there were scrimmages that was open to the public. And this was just so cool. It was just so freaking cool to see. Now, obviously, for many people, the touch point for women playing baseball is a league of their own. And I think if you listen to this podcast, you know that we have talked a lot about, we love softball. It is something that entertains us and is a wonderful sport all its own, but that girls and women should be empowered and have the opportunities to play baseball if that's what they want to do. And setting up this league as something that hopefully one day can be commercially viable, to give that end point for the journey of young girls playing baseball is just stupendous. I wrote about it over at Yahoo. You should go read that. And I would say that my biggest takeaway, having coached in Little League and coached girls in Little League, is that you often see that kids, like, being the only girl on a team, obviously not something I've ever experienced, but I've seen it from the coaching perspective. Being the only girl on the team forces the kids to carry something extra when they come to the field. They always feel like they need to prove themselves. And that manifests both like on the field during practice and in social situations, right? And that's not to say that women and girls shouldn't have the opportunity to play against dudes if they want to, and if they have those opportunities and if they can hang, like that's a good thing. It's just that, like, talking to the women who were at this event, and many of them saying, I have never played in a baseball environment before where everyone was a woman, and that was empowering and almost like released a different type of energy and joy. And I talked to some of the parents, this wasn't in my story, but I talked to some of the parents of the girls that I used to coach, one of whom recently got involved in Baseball for All, which is Justine Siegel's organization that like provides travel ball type opportunities to girls who want to play baseball. And like these parents are saying, yeah, when she goes out to play in these environments, it's a completely different situation and it's totally freeing. And so just to be around it and see it, one of our pals from childhood who we worked with at baseball camp growing up, whose brother was at my wedding, she tried out and like made the final day, and it was just so cool to see her thriving and succeeding in that space, and for it to be at Nats Park, right? Like,
Yeah.
what an experience that was. But my biggest take, this is the beginning of something very cool, right? Now, where the team's going to be, where the game's going to be, how many people are going to play, how can you watch it, like that's all TBD. But I would say the league structure very much seemed like it had its crap together, and I'm very hopeful and very excited for what this turns into.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously we've seen the explosion of women's sports at different sports in terms of popularity, of course, with basketball leading the way in a lot of senses, but softball as well has grown, and the pro leagues that we've seen in softball. And I think that's been exciting. I think what the biggest challenge, especially as we grow, as we see leagues like this grow, in terms of, not that viability commercially should be the most important thing, of course, like the opportunities to play, you have to start somewhere. It's not like you're suddenly expecting to be on TV all the time, but it's that, even for softball, for those pro leagues, a lot of those players, young softball fans are familiar with because they play in the Women's College World Series, and there's an experience of getting to know them as they become stars in college. Obviously, there just historically been fewer of those opportunities for young women who are playing baseball to become notable. And that's why people like Monet Davis are extremely important, because the Little League World Series has been the most obvious venue for girls obviously at a young age to be playing baseball on a very, very big stage. And so that is why, and she, of course, I know she's involved in and around in this, and we've seen there was another girl who's there in Williamsport this year on the Australian team. We've seen almost one a year basically since Monet. So those are important too. And that's the challenge I think that they face in terms of garnering that kind of casual interest that the other women's sports obviously already have. But that doesn't mean that it should be stopping the hope to build this up, because one day you hope that there are just women baseball players. It's like, yeah, that's someone that I'm a fan of.
The biggest impediment or disadvantage or difference between women's baseball and other women's sports is that there are no scholarships available at the college level. And so what ends up happening in the development pipeline is, if I'm a 14-year-old girl and I rake and I'm really good at this, well, why would I continue to play baseball when there is no clear pathway for me that's going to benefit me, when I can move over to softball and maybe get a big college scholarship and NIL to a Power 5, right? Like that is
100%.
Whether it is like a cognizant decision or a conscious one, or it happens kind of more passively, it's a huge part of this. And so, not that this is how the league is its stated goal, but like having scholarships and opportunities available for college women's baseball, like that is a huge component of this. So all in all, super cool. Go read. There's a bunch of stuff written about it. They're making a documentary about the experience. It was just really cool and frankly really inspiring, because like, I mean, more baseball the better. Like if you want to play ball at a high level, you should be able to do
we
that.
want more leagues to follow. We're the first people. It's like, oh great, you want to give us another league for us to keep track of? Sounds good to me. I obviously support that. But yes, go read Jake's story. A lot of good details and scene in there. All right. A few more topics. Let's go around the league.
The Mets pitching cheating lab has done it again. No, I'm kidding. The New York Mets have promoted Jonah Tong, another top pitching prospect, to the big leagues. He will make his big league debut on Friday in New York against the Miami Marlins. Jonah Tong is a fascinating character, and if he's good, he will be a big effing deal. Now, that is for a number of reasons. Jordan, let's start with the development story here, because it is very abnormal, and I think does an important job in explaining why Jonah Tong is significant.
Yeah, so we talked recently when we did our little prospect check-in about these Mets pitchers, and we speculated, all right, these guys are probably going to get called up soon because the Mets rotation is kind of a mess. We had Brandon Sproat, who still hasn't been called up. We had Nolan McLean. Those are guys that took very traditional paths. They were stars at the collegiate level. They were known for many, many years. Jonah Tong, quite different. This is a kid from Ontario, Canada, who before his senior year of high school was really not known by anybody. He was committed to play at North Dakota State, but his velocity started to tick up his senior year. This is in 2022. He transfers from his school in Canada to the Georgia Premier Academy, which is sort of like an athletic boarding school situation in Georgia. And he starts throwing harder. And at that point, it's like, oh, hold on a second. This guy might be able to get picked out of high school, but he was still relatively unknown because he hadn't been to very many events. He goes to the MLB Draft League as a high schooler in 2022. He has a 10 ERA, but he shows enough on the mound with a very interesting delivery, and his stuff was pretty good, where it's like, all right, we have something here. But this is an incredible scouting job by the Mets, because not only did they sign him, they got him in the 7th round for under $300,000. Like, this is not someone that they had to overpay or give him $3 million and hope that he turned into something good.
This was a find.
This was a find and a belief in the kid, in the athlete, that he could develop into something more than he was at that point. They were willing to take that risk. They knew that he was signable. That's another thing. You have to understand who you're kind of working with when you're talking about kids that age. And in 2024, he was unbelievable. But because it was so different looking and because he didn't have the track record, going into this year, it was like, all right, like the Mets have something here, but like, what is it really? And he just took another step forward this year to where I believe he's leading the minor leagues in strikeouts, has a 1.43 ERA, didn't allow a run in his 2 starts in AAA. He just turned 22, and it looks different. It's pretty much the closest thing we've had to a Tim Lincecum-esque delivery. He's not that small, but he's also not that big. He's 6'1" and pretty skinny. But man, oh man, like at this point, for how fast he's gotten this good, that's why you get excited about talents like this, because that's the kind of progression. And honestly, Nolan McLean's similar for a different reason, right? Because he ditched the two-way thing and suddenly became this awesome pitching prospect. You wrote about that recently too. Tong is just how fast he's gotten this good and has become this polished is remarkable. And now we'll see if he can meaningfully impact the Mets rotation, which I don't think the Mets were planning on asking him to do when the season started. But now here they are. They realize he is probably one of our best pitchers, and this is the Mets exhibiting a level of aggression and urgency that I think you have to commend. But we'll see how he does, because it is hard to be a good starting pitcher as a rookie. That applies to, that's why Paul Skeens is so special. That's why even Jacob Mizorowski in a smaller sample, and it's been up and down with him. You can't count on him to be an immediate ace, but for what he's been able to overcome and what he's been able to prove already, I'm not really going to doubt this kid at this point. 2 other quick topics, because we, fortunately, lucky us, we get to go talk to baseball players as part of our job. And we did that this week. And I got to talk to Junior Caminero and watch Junior Caminero hit a couple more home runs in Cleveland against the team that originally signed him out of the Dominican Republic before he was traded in an unfortunate transaction for the Cleveland Guardians organization for Tobias Myers, who of course did not end up being anything. But watching Junior Caminero, who also just turned 22 and is now at 39 home runs, watch him hit 2 more homers on Monday, and just kind of wrapping my mind around the season that he is having and has had, and what to think about what he has already accomplished and what more he could do is pretty staggering and kind of tough to really encapsulate, because he's now doing things that have not been done before for players this age. He's now doing things. He's heading for the franchise record in home runs. Carlos Pena 2007 with 46. He's got 39. It's not September yet. And I don't know, when you are this productive this early in your career, it's hard not to dream pretty big. And yes, his on-base percentage is still way lower than you normally associate with top hitters in baseball. And in some ways, you could view that as an even more impressive thing, because most players who swing the bat this hard and have this much power are striking out a ton. And Junior Caminero is not doing that. He is not walking either, and that is a flaw in his profile. But what he's been able to do offensively this year, and how much better he's gotten defensively, especially in the second half, is what makes him on a very short list of just position players you would build around. I mean, we're not going to just go through that exercise now, but there aren't a lot of guys that you would pick over Junior Caminero right now as just a no doubt offensive force of nature. And it's just he's so much fun to watch do his thing, and cool to kind of see it up close this week.
Seems like a player the Guardians could use. Junior Caminero type guy.
Yeah, they could use a few of those, I would say, but I don't think they're going to do
settle
a
for
little
one.
redo on that redo on that deal. I think, I don't think the Rays are going to give them back that one. So, but yeah, Junior Caminero, hell of a thing.
Junior Caminero for Jose Ramirez. Who says no?
I think the Rays say no. I think Jose Ramirez says no, to be honest.
I think Junior Caminero also says no. I think everyone who says
yes. But I understand you also spoke to a good baseball player this week. Is that true?
Yeah, I talked to Garrett Crochet. The Red Sox were in Baltimore. They're still there. And Crochet is set to start on Thursday. I sat down and chatted with him for a little bit. I just think his development from injured reliever to no doubt top 4 pitcher in the world is fascinating and singular. Remember, leading into 2023, he really hadn't, leading into 2024, really hadn't thrown that much in the big leagues. Before last year, he had a grand total of 73 innings with 0 starts. Okay? He blows out, gets Thomas Johnson, comes back, and the White Sox are like, hey, brother, you're going to start on opening day. And Jordan, you remember the two of us were like, what are they doing? Garrett Crochet on opening day? They're out of their minds. And then bang. Last year, pitches to a 3.58 across 146 innings. And the peripherals are indicating that this is one of the best pitchers in the world, but he's not necessarily collecting outs at that rate and exhibiting the dominance that everybody knows he's capable of. He's on something of an innings limit too, because he is almost limiting himself coming off TJ. He knows the White Sox suck. He's pitching for the worst team ever traded to the Red Sox. And one of the things that he said that was really interesting is, like, in signing the extension, he wanted to have the financial security so that he could just empty the tank, so that he was not worrying about his elbow and if it blew again, how would that impact his future? He was just like, now that I'm set, like, I'm going to throw 9 if I can. I thought his at bat against Aaron Judge earlier this year was one of the more memorable showdowns we've had in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many dudes just face Aaron Judge 4 times? Like, that in and of itself is a special thing, to face Judge 4 times in a game. And so, yeah, it was just very interesting to talk to Crochet and hear a little bit about his process. And you can read that over at Yahoo later this week. All right, it has been a very busy show, but we have not talked about the biggest news on planet Earth. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce engaged. And related to that, I have one dumb question. So these are the most famous coupled people on the planet right now. Athlete, superstar. My dumb question, Jordan, more famous, Travis and Taylor or Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe? You remember that. I remember you remember that.
Yeah, man. Oof. Absolutely. I remember when Marilyn went on Joe DiMaggio's podcast, and it was like, oh my God, she doesn't go
Dom
on
DiMaggio.
podcasts.
Joe had the pod with his brother, Dom DiMaggio.
Exactly. It was called
Old Heights.
I bring that up as a joking intro to this premise because Taylor Swift, comparing this power couple to one from many decades ago is quite challenging to understand that, like, the world now is both much bigger and much smaller than it was then. I don't have a great sense for Marilyn Monroe's global fame at the time. I understand it existed for sure, but what that meant at the time,
Anyone's global fame,
anyone's global fame at the time, right? What that actually, means compared to like when Taylor Swift is selling out the biggest stadiums on the planet in every continent, that is more compelling than what Marilyn Monroe was probably the level that she was at. But there were also fewer celebrities at the time. So that is the argument in favor of the Monroe DiMaggio combination. But I think at this point, I feel pretty comfortable saying that Taylor Swift has achieved levels that are basically unreachable for anybody from many decades ago. And so I'm going to give the nod to Mr. Cleveland Heights. And by the way, I drive past Travis Kelce's high school all the time now, and I'm just like, wow. That's crazy. So and as someone who's become more of a Taylor Swift fan over the last few years, I'm like, yeah, good. God bless. More content. So, bring it on.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. And here's how I'm gonna do it.
Go Team DiMaggio. Let's hear it. Let's hear the defense. I'm ready.
Well, I'm gonna start with Monroe. I would say Monroe is the most famous woman of the 1950s, right?
All right.
The most famous woman of her peak. We're talking 10 more seasons there. I would say Taylor Swift is the most famous woman of her era, probably of even the 21st century so far. So not to cancel those two out, but they, in terms era adjusted, right? We're talking similar hemispheres of superstardom. Okay. Now let's move to the men.
Global fame plus. That's what you're going
Global fame plus. Let's move to the men. I think it's indisputable that Joe DiMaggio is a bigger star than Travis Kelce, removed from the coupling. Okay? Removed from the coupling. Joe DiMaggio is a top, 25, 40 player of all time?
Oh, whoa, no, you just changed the parameters there, my friend. You just changed the parameters, because if you're talking about where he ranks relative to his peers on his respective field, okay, maybe you're going to end up having an argument. But dude, it's football. What? Come on. What are we talking about? He's been playing on the team that's in the Super Bowl every year.
But wrong. It's football now. Okay, so football now. The way that everyone cares about football now.
And it's baseball then. I get it.
That's what baseball was in the 40s.
I know. Okay?
And we had Joe DiMaggio. You can make an argument Joe DiMaggio was the most famous athlete of the decade, of the 1940s. Now, remember, he did not marry Marilyn Monroe until until he retired. That's forgotten history.
Big mistake.
But is Travis Kelce the most famous athlete of the last decade? He's not even in the top 25.
But you're underrating what the association has done for him. So that's what I think.
Sure, but I think you should remove that.
But we're literally talking about them as a couple. So I think if the
his
argument
association okay,
you can't have both ways. What are we debating or not? The couple. If you want to just argue Travis Kelce versus Joe DiMaggio and pretend like their significant others don't exist, that's a funny, weird conversation to have. But that's not the premise you brought here today. So I think I am going to stick with Travis and Taylor. But I think it is interesting. I think it is an interesting comparison for a number of reasons. And I do feel like there are probably people. I don't know if there are people listening to this that are old enough to remember. You guys remember, right? Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe as a thing. That'd be awesome. If you are, let us know. Baseballbarbacast.
Email us.
Either way, whether you remember that or not,
call us on a landline.
I do feel like people will have opinions about this, and I look forward to hearing from them. So let us know.
Are there any other athlete, celebrity couples that are in the hemisphere of either of those two? Those are, I think, 1 and 2 by a mile.
Yeah, at this point, I don't. I mean, again, we've had some pretty good ones, but this is this is going to be a tough one to top for quite a long time. I don't
say,
know. I'm just like, again, like the first,
okay.
You just have to keep focus on like anyone being more famous than Taylor Swift anytime soon is difficult to fathom from just like that space. So it's quite the bar to beat.
There are two others, I think, in the modern era that deserve a hat tip. And that would be Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, right? Hall of Fame player. Dwayne Wade's a Hall of Famer.
We're not even in the same.
Dwayne Wade's a Hall of Famer. Now, the one that is higher profile than that is David and Victoria Beckham.
Yes, that is a much more compelling one that you should have led with. That said, and soccer is a nice starter for sure. Really good.
He's the most famous. He was the most famous soccer player in the world.
Very famous
and hot.
Sure. But also in that case, he's doing the care. I mean, I know Victoria Beckham was famous. She's famous too, but I still don't think it's there. But it's a good one. It's a better one. Our producers tell us to shut up because this is not the point.
And
shout out Cole Tucker. Saw him at the All-Star game. What a great guy. We're done. Thank you for listening to Baseball Barbacast. Thank you to Cal Ripken Jr. for joining us on a podcast in which we talked about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce for 10 minutes. You can email us baseballbarbacast@gmail.com, and we will be back later this week. Reminder, folks, you can watch Baseball Barbacast, Yahoo Sports Network, our first ever streaming TV channel, Yahoo Sports Network, available to stream on all leading fast services, streaming live 24/7 on yahoosports.tv, where you can catch all the shows on your phone or your browser. Most importantly, Baseball Barbacast. Thank you all for listening, watching, enjoying, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Bye-bye.